Hey, Brigid.
Hey, Clint.
If you could use the magic Carrick's translator box to talk to one kind of animal in the world, what would you choose?
Gritty.
Gritty. Right, because there's no other way to communicate with Gritty. Perfect answer. No notes.
Thank you.
Push the button.
Hello. It's the Mercy of Pods, the world's first and only podcast about the Captives War series by James S.A. Corey. Every episode, we do a recap and close read of one part of The Mercy of Gods, the first novel in the series, from which we get our title. Spoilers will abound for The Mercy of Gods and Live Suit, and also probably The Expanse. In this episode, we're starting Act 3 of the book and getting into some fissures. I am Brigid, and this is my co-host Clint.
Yeah.
He wrote a summary of this part, and we're going to go through it. If you like this podcast, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you don't like this podcast, you can go space yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Fuck you. Just putting that out there.
Well said.
Thank you. It's eloquent. That's what we do here at the Mercy of Pods. All right, so here's the recap of The Mercy of Gods, Part 4, Fissures, which is a fun word to say. We open, as always, with Akurtaclaw's last statement, and as usual, he is salty. But this time, rather than being salty about people in general, he's just sort of pissed about one guy, presumably, though not explicitly, the betrayer. E.T. basically calls him a normal, uninteresting NPC, but with one notable exception. Quote, "The only thing that I think made him stand out was the depth of hatred that the others came to have for him." End quote. Which I think is a juicy little nugget.
I agree. I think that is so bitchy of him to say. And also, I'm so obsessed with this because with humans, a normal nobody could always be capable of something stupendous, because the difference between us, like the things that are cool about us, are weird little differences.
Yep.
Whereas for the Carricks, they don't understand anything about individuals being different. And that's our strength, because for them, the better an individual fits into the structure, the more valuable they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. So, assuming that Akurtaclaw is talking about the betrayer, and why wouldn't he be? He doesn't specifically name the betrayer in this part, but I think it's pretty obvious that's who he's talking about, or at least that's who we're supposed to think he's talking about. And assuming that the betrayer is Dafyd, which seems to be, which others is E.T. talking about here? He says the depth of hatred that the others came to have for him. Is he talking about the other people? And if so, which other people? Is it the people that he's with? Is it maybe the humans that are the great enemy? Is he talking about other species? It's sort of tantalizing with possibilities. I think that the sort of natural assumption is that other people end up hating Dafyd. And the ending of this book, with Dafyd selling out the resistance and subsequently being appointed Carrick's liaison, definitely sets up plenty of avenues for humans to come to hate Dafyd, but I'm really interested to watch that procession.
Yeah, me too. He could be talking about how much the other Carricks, besides himself, came to hate him.
Yep, he could be. He could be. I would be interested to find out. Chapter 26. Jessan was drunk with joy, inebriated by the presence of her brother and the knowledge that other people exist. She meets some of the new folks. There's this guy named Alston who tells a pretty decent dick joke. And there's good old Llaren Morse. This guy keeps showing up like a bad penny. There's a woman named Merrol and some other folks. And Jessan reflects on the last time she saw Jellit and all that has happened since then. Jellit's group is jealous that Tanner's group has a window in their apartment. Jellit's group was apparently taken because Llaren Morse's lensing studies, which we all thought were completely uninteresting and unimportant back there, were extremely interesting to the Carricks. And that's ostensibly why they've been kept together. Llaren Morse and Alston are like, this is cool that we're all hanging out, but best be getting back. And Tanner jumps in to go with them, since he doesn't want to be around Else and Dafyd bumping uglies all the time. Reasonable, Tanner, I get it. And then Rickar and Campar join too, just for funsies. And Alston says they have plenty of room, but then that makes everyone think about who died in order to make that room.
Alston's so good at bringing the vibe up and then immediately crushing it.
Yeah.
Anyway, sleepover party.
Hey, fun stuff. We can do facials and good times.
Pillow fights.
Yes. I want to see a Campar pillow fight so badly. While they were talking earlier, Llaren and Jellit had told our heroes of their sort of separate passage over, which went pretty much the same right down to the detail about the impromptu choir of prisoners starting up in Llaren and Jellit's group, which I love that. It sort of shows the sort of universality of human experience. And then when Dafyd and Synnia tell the story of their own transit, including the whole exploding soft Lothark thing, Jesson gets the impression that Llaren and Jellit have heard this story before, which is interesting. And then, when they had recounted the saga with the Night Drinkers, Dafyd admits that it was him who eventually found Jellit, since he started asking random aliens if there was a person nearby who smelled like Jesson, and eventually something said yes. Later, or further on in this conversation, they all speculate that the red goop in the shower is there to repress chemoreception. Jesson wonders, speculates rather, that the Carricks already had the red goo waiting for them as they arrived, so they already knew what the problem would be and the solution. That's a quote. They already knew what the problem would be and the solution. Which is a great point, Jellit. It's almost like they had experience with humans before. And I think that's because they did.
Well, and don't they already know that the fivefold enemy uses chemoreception by the time they get these guys, or no?
I don't think so. No. I think that's after, or in the wonky time frame. So no, I think it's because that they have taken human prisoners before. That's my grand theory.
I like it. Okay.
Yeah, even Elsworm says, hey, that's an interesting conclusion, probably because she knows that it is. The swarm knows that it is. And then everyone got bummed out because they were all thinking of Ajian and how they miss it. So then Jesson's point of view shifts back to the present after everybody has left except for Jellit. And Jesson and Jellit are hanging out washing the dishes. Jellit says he was worried about her, and Jesson said she was worried about her too. Jellit kisses her on the forehead. Later, as Jesson is going to bed, she has trouble sleeping with the sort of candy coating of the day wearing off. She reminisces about being a Dian at Irvian. She thinks about kissing boys and kissing girls and the taste of cold beer on a summer afternoon, which I think is a nice little phrase.
Me too.
Yeah. And then she remembered that one of her therapists saying something that anger is pain in a party mask. It had seemed wise at the time. She wasn't sure she agreed with it anymore. She thinks maybe anger was a scab over a wound, or maybe it was what happened when the universe spun you so hard you lost everything. Or maybe it was just a thing that welled up in you when you found yourself lying sleepless in the dark of a prison work camp with no idea what your future might be, or if your past mattered, which is rough. So, unable to sleep, she gets up. Llaren Morse is still hanging out, and she sees him talking to Synnia. Synnia, sotto voce, sort of agrees to help Llaren. And then, afterwards, she doesn't tell Jesson what she agreed to. Jesson is suspicious, and rightfully so.
Okay, I have two questions and comments. I think this is the chapter where Jesson says that when she was without Jellit, she learned that she can't live without Jellit. But that's not true, because she did live without Jellit, and she found another way to get help, and it was her idea to make her medication. Like, she wasn't able to make the medication herself, but she got help from other people, and other people around her supported her. And I think it's so suspicious or weird, or maybe like, I think maybe she has like a dynamic with Jellit where they're like enmeshed, and she thinks she can't live without him, and so does he.
Right.
But she actually could.
Right.
And I think that informs the desperation with which she's viewing the current situation, is that she has this idea that there's only one way for her to survive. And it's if she keeps her medication and keeps Jellit. And then also, what do we think about this thing where it seems like Synnia has heard the story before? Like, how do you think that was just...
Oh, you mean it seemed like Jellit and Llaren had heard this story before?
Yeah, sorry.
It's because Austencourt told them.
Oh, God, I forgot.
Yeah. At this point, they haven't revealed that Austencourt is still alive and in connection with these guys.
Right. Oh, my God. Of course. Thank you.
Sure. Chapter 27. Hold on to your butts, folks, because this chapter is a banger and a whole hell of a lot happens. Dafyd and Else are out among the alien menagerie with the magic translator Pox, trying to play junior reporter and interview as many beings as they can. They start with the Phylarchs of Ostradim, the bone horses. The Phylarchs came from a planet with at least 2 other species of note, the Elm Wrath and the Coli, who were found wanting in the eyes of the Carricks and thus culled. The Phylarchs are splendid architects, which is interesting because they're horses. And so, I don't know, like...
Do they use their little horsey teeth to draw with a pencil?
They don't talk about them having opposable thumbs. I'm really interested in how this works, but who knows?
We need to know so much more about the Phylarchs. Phylarchpedia, please.
Seriously. Anyway, so when the Carricks came, they put them to work architecting. Mm-hmm. And there's an interesting little nugget where the Phylarchs mentions that the Carricks initially took the Coli to a place, quote, as they took all things then, to a white plain above a lavender sea, which I think is interesting.
I do too. I'm not sure how important it is exactly, but the White Plain and Lavender Sea could be the Carrick's homeworld, and Tonner is pretty sure that they evolved as an aquatic species.
Yeah, it could be. I think that's a really strong possibility. Regardless, I think it's interesting that at some point in the war, they were taking the subject species someplace else. So this is really far along in the war.
Right.
Because it would have taken, I imagine, the Phylarchs a really long time to build all these ziggurats, especially if they're just using their little horse teeth. Rather than their hands. I don't know.
They don't have hands. Well, it doesn't say if they have hands.
Doesn't. I don't know.
Someone weigh in.
So anyway, under that cold sun, next to the White Plain and the Lavender Sea, the Coli lost their will to live and passed to dust. Without anything else, the Phylarchs built, and they built, and they built, and they built. It talks about how they built the ziggurats, and as we mentioned in the last episode, I think that this passage indicates that there's more to the ziggurats' place than the Carricks entirely understand. The Phylarch then says it will never see Ostradim again, but that's okay, because at least they're not the Elmroth or the Coli. And quote, but what we still are, and if I were not pleased by that, I would not be anything at all. And the Phylarch then says that the best life left to the humans is to learn to love the Carricks as they have.
Grim.
Yep. They next talk to a flying ball of insect-size pink bits. The floating ball is very standoffish. And it says, quote, whatever it is you're planning will fail, and all of your kind will burn. Go away. We will not burn with you. Go away. Well,
rude.
Absolutely. That was mean. I don't like that little flying ball.
No, those pink bits can fuck off too.
Yeah. Next, they talk to an alcove full of ropey, swampy vines with glowing grubs on them. And it's unclear to Dafyd and Else whether the vines are talking or the grubs. And what it says is so beautiful. It says, quote, history? I have no history. Maybe I did once, but how would I know? To rise isn't the same as to unfall, end quote. It says that none of them here have a history or a home world other than the Carricks. Its only job is to filter the air when it gets dirty. Quote, my home world? I don't understand the question. I don't have a home world. I don't have a home. I don't have a world. Whatever I was plucked from, I was plucked from. I have a task and I do it. Anything more than that hurts. And then it tells them to go away.
Also kind of rude.
Yeah, but to rise isn't the same as to unfall is an incredible line. It is an absolute heater. And also it brings back the ideas from the Marcus Aurelius quote we talked about last episode about how the price of separation is degradation. The price of rising is having fallen first. And I think it will also be relevant to the big discussion that Brigid and I are going to have towards the end of this episode about the fight or flight response of the humans involved in this.
Yes.
Yeah. So next, they talk to a knee-high thing that has a shell and 6 legs, and I think that this is probably the crab dogs, although Dafyd doesn't say specifically that it's the crab dogs. I will note that whatever it is wears clothes and adornments, which I think is interesting. The Carricks also appear to wear some adornments or shells or whatever. So that's at least 3 species, including humans, that have clothing, which is, kind of nice, I guess, or something to keep track of. Anyway, it also basically tells Dafyd and Else to fuck off too, because if it talks to them, it will be killed. Whatever, crab dogs. Mean.
This is the first one to be like, I can't talk to you.
Exactly.
Which makes you think maybe the other ones were being super obtuse and weird on purpose because they wanted to offer... I mean, if I was saying some shit like what the Phylarch was saying, I might be trying to give a message in coded language.
Right. That's a great point. Yeah, so last they talked to what is described as a standing flicker of blue, like a flame without a heat. And it's like a spectrum here, and we're towards the end of the spectrum because it is basically all in on becoming one with the Carricks. It sort of hand waves away the importance of physical bodies, or it would if it had hands to wave. But it also says that all nature is porous, which is, I think, is interesting because I don't know what the fuck he means by that. I have no idea, but I'm fascinated. It also says that there used to be, and this is in all caps, a carrying one, but it is gone. I assume that the carrying one is whatever this species god is, but it is gone, and all of its children's are gone, and it used to sing for other reasons, but now it sings the songs of war. And through that war, they share in the glory of the Carricks. And so I think the idea of singing the songs of war is interesting. I'm wondering if this being is sort of the basis for the half-mind, because the half-mind also sings the song of war in a way. Obviously not sure, but that's just sort of something I'm throwing out there.
This is at least the third... Okay, so the Phylarchs talk about there being a song in the ziggurats.
That's true.
And then this guy is singing, and also aren't sound waves on the electromagnetic spectrum?
Yes, I think. I don't know. Maybe.
I'm pretty sure. I don't know. But if they are, then okay, that's 3 species because the fivefold enemy communicates in radio waves, and then these 2 communicate in sound. Singing some kind of a wave. I don't know. Waves. Let's see if waves keep coming up. Waves. I don't know. Okay.
Singing songs. I don't know. Yeah. I mean,
songs. There's
a lot of sing songs that have happened so far. So
resonance choirs in prison camps. I don't know.
It's a theme. So Else and Dafyd take a break. All this talking to aliens. It's hard work. They flirt a bit, and it seems like Else is gonna spill the swarmy beings when. It thinks better of it. And instead, Else says, quote, I'm not going to be good for you. I'm not going to make you happy. Which, gotta be honest, in my experience, is not a thing that most romantic partners want to hear. Quite frankly.
Wrong.
No.
No, they do. You are unfamiliar with the bad boy or girl or them trope,
I guess so.
this is big time catnip for a certain type of person, which Dafyd absolutely is.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Nice guy.
That's a good point. Else then starts to give him the "I'm not who you think I am" speech that happens in every superhero movie. But just when they're about to get to brass tacks, they note that their non-Occur-to-Claw librarian is walking toward the cathedral, and there's a commotion following. They decide to follow, and they end up at the Night Drinker's alcove. Another Carrix is waiting there too, presumably the Night Drinker's librarian. The Night Drinker's librarian submits to the Human's librarian, and eventually the Human's librarian breaks the limb. Then the Carrix got up and they were like, now that's over. Let's get to the slaughter. The Human's librarian sends a bunch of raccoons at the Night Drinker's lair, and it is an immediate massacre. The Night Drinkers fight back, but they are completely overmatched. It takes about an hour, but all the Night Drinkers are killed, even the ones that tried to run with their eggs, and their fungal lair was then ripped out of the alcove.
The scene is very upsetting, but there's a detail where the two Carrix are interacting, like they describe them as being like two coworkers by the water cooler.
Yep.
Or something like that.
Yeah, sort of the banality of evil. I also think this is a nice way of, giving everybody what they want in the worst way, which is a storytelling device that I think can be used really effectively, because for the most of this book, or for all of this book that we've interacted with the Night Drinkers, we're like, fuck the Night Drinkers, they fuck them, and then we see their slaughter and we're like, man, that sucks. And so it's uncomfortable rather than triumphant. Mm-hmm. And so everyone disperses, and Dafyd asks Else if this is a result of the Night Drinker's surrender, and Else says, "What is." And then Dafyd barfs. Chapter 28. We are back with Jessin at Jellit's place, and she is noting all the great and sundry ways in which Jellit has changed. They talk about the similarities in how they were captured, and also the trip over, and then Jessin notes that even Jellit's room was like a funhouse mirror of her own. Different and the same. They had room... At Jellit's place, they had rooms up some ladders, and they only had one shower, but in contrast to their own, each room had its own toilets. Quote, "It was like the Carrix had a vague level of accuracy in making space for their pet humans, and close enough was close enough." End quote. Which is an interesting theory that keeps coming up in your chapters, Jessin, that the Carrix had some idea of how to keep humans alive, and they were just sort of winging it after that idea. I really appreciate you keep mentioning this. Thank you, Jessin. You are supporting my very correct theory.
Extremely correct.
Jellit tells Jessin he's proud of her for making it, even though her brain was trying to kill her. Jessin says it was a close thing at times, and then she thinks back to the first time she felt suicidal, and how her family took turns watching her to make sure she didn't do it. Jessin notes that her brain has been a bastard all her life, and her reliance on Jellit to keep her going is unfair to him. She tells Jellit that if they were back on Ajian, she would let him go. Let him take his own postings. Knowing what happens to Jellit, this is rough stuff on reread.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jellit says if they get to that point, they'll talk about it.
It really concerns me that Jessin's care team didn't try to give her a higher quality of life or more time between episodes. Maybe psychiatry isn't that advanced on Ajian.
Yeah. I mean, they've got the lensing effects down. Psychiatry, maybe forget about that.
Superluminal readings, totally, but psychiatry, come on.
Maybe they're all Scientologists.
By medication, she means vitamin E.
Ajian is one of the many worlds that Xenu rules.
Now we're gonna get sued.
Oh, that's fine. So, in comes Alston with Merrol and a new research assistant named Dennia Dennia. Interesting.
Ow.
Wow. And Jesson notes that they stop talking about whatever they were talking about as soon as they see her. What could it be? We may never know. And then Synnia comes in with Llaren Morse, and Jesson thinks that something is amiss because of the brightness in Synnia's eyes and the tautness of her smile. Jesson realizes that Synnia is plotting violence, and she's unnerved by it.
Right, because she's seen her plot violence before.
Yep, sure has. And then the door opens, and another man comes in. That's right, it's Urus Austencourt, who, for the purposes of this podcast, is played by Jon Bernthal. Yeah, that's who. So when you're picturing Urus Austencourt, you're picturing Jon Bernthal, who was Shane in The Walking Dead. He's Mikey in The Bear. He was also
And he's the Punisher.
The Punisher. He's perfect for this role.
You're just as charmed as you would be if Jon Bernthal was trying to convince you.
Yes.
Just keep that in mind, audience.
Yep. Jesson remembers Austencourt, and despite the fact that he is very charming and very handsome, she doesn't like it. He's even leaner and meaner now, and he says hi to Jesson. She realizes the meeting with Austin Bernthal isn't a coincidence. He wants to chat with her about the fact that she's a war leader. Austencourt says that they've tracked down about 300 people so far, all told.
300 people? How did they do this?
I have no idea.
They never tell us.
It's really impressive.
It's definitely not with a translator box.
No, they don't have one. He says that it's mostly researchers and administration, and relays a rumor that he heard that the artists that were taken were classed as extraneous and culled. I am going to assume that they were all members of the Agenese Red Hot Chili Peppers, so I don't feel bad about that. They deserve it. Austencourt then says he wants to talk war leader to war leader. But, hey, he doesn't need her to fight. He just needs support. Specifically, he wants them to make chemical weapons against the Carracks. In exchange, he gives her an improvised gun. Jesson remarks that it's wild that they made weapons, and Austencourt says, yeah, and the Carracks don't care. Why do you think that is? Merrol answers, it's because the Carracks aren't afraid of them. And Jesson thinks maybe that it's that the Carracks here are low level enough that they don't care if some of them die. And I think, ¿por qué no los dos? It's probably both, right?
Yeah, it's for sure both. It's also a completely different way of looking at risk.
Absolutely.
Than humans have.
Because it doesn't matter if lower level Carracks die. They don't give a shit.
To the Carracks, it doesn't matter if the whole Carrack species dies, because that would mean they were meant to die. They'll do everything they can to not, but if the humans are able to beat them, that which is.
Absolutely. Great point.
Austencourt doesn't understand this at all. Anyway, we'll get into it later.
Yeah. So then Jesson reminds Austencourt how well the last prison riot went, which was not good. She says you can't win. Austencourt says, well, it depends on what you mean by win, doesn't it? Jesson says she doesn't know what he means, but she actually does. She knows that they want to go out fighting and dying bravely, but Jesson knows that this will be futile. The rebellion would be meaningless. Austencourt disagrees. He refuses to be good pets for the Carracks and argues that a life in bondage is no life at all. Jesson picks up the gun and examines it. She thinks about how none of these people really know what it means to be suicidal, but she does. Quote, Jesson was a citizen of the darkness. What Austencourt was peddling was a meaningful death, a die on your feet or live on your knees ending. He had to paint death as noble to get people to go along with it. He was an amateur. End quote. She looks at the gun and she thinks about what it would feel like to blow Austencourt's brains out right there. She also thinks about killing herself with it too, but she knows she won't because it would upset Jellit. And, to her surprise, she didn't want to.
It is crucial that you not give a suicidal person a kamikaze mission.
I think that's right. Yes.
I mean, I guess Austencourt knows exactly what he's doing.
Mm-hmm. Presumably, Austencourt has talked to Jellit about Jesson's particular mental illness, right?
What do we really know about this Jellit? Not a lot.
I don't know. So then Jesson asks Austencourt what he really wants, and he says he just wants help making biological weapons against the Carracks. They've already done it against the night drinkers, so no big deal to move up the food chain, right? You make them, we'll use them. Easy peasy.
The first sentence of the next chapter it shows that she's decided to find out if they can do it. I feel like she did this like 180. Like it seemed like she was leaning against all of this. Like she seemed really disgusted with Asadcore, I guess. And then when in the very first sentence in the next chapter, it's like she's talking to Tanner about how to do it.
Yeah.
I was like, had whiplash.
Yeah. It's unclear to me whether she brought the plan back to the group as like, I endorse this plan, or she brought back the plan to the group just being like, hey, I'm just, relaying a message. I think either way, in order for her to bring the plan back to the group, she had to be like, okay, this is something we could do, right?
She had to at least be curious if they could do it and not say no.
Absolutely. I guess we'll see. So then, chapter 29, which is our contractually obligated Tanner chapter for this part. Tanner wonders whether they can do what Astancourt wants. Synnia is all in, of course. And then Campar says, why would they even consider it?
Great question.
Don't misunderstand. I appreciate dramatic flair, but we're talking about group suicide. Synnia says we're talking about fighting back, and Campar says correctly, that's a distinction without a difference. If you fight back, it's still my head on the pike, and I'm not in the market for a death, however noble. Which is great. He is correct. Else agrees with Campar. Wonder why? We may never know. Rickar jumps in and basically says that the question is whether or not they ever want to fight back. Because if not, they're admitting that they're servants for the Carricks for the rest of their lives. Synnia says, if not now, then when? Campar's answer is when they have a faint chance at success. And so then the group starts bickering, and Tanner jumps in and says, hey, wait. Let's not get upset at each other. He looks at Dafyd to see if Dafyd wants to help him calm everyone down, but Dafyd is miles away. And then Tanner thinks it's pathetic that this is the man that Else left him for. Tanner says he's not interested in a philosophical discussion about freedom, which is too bad because I very much am Tanner. I want to have that conversation, and we're going to have some of it later. And anyway, he asks Jesson what Astancourt wants them to do. And Jesson says the same thing that they did to the night drinkers, but just at a different target. Tanner knows it's not quite the same thing at all. And while Else and Synnia are trying to pull him in opposite directions, Tanner starts thinking about the problem in steps. If Dafyd can maybe scrounge up some Carrick's DNA or whatever they have, they could start studying it and maybe figure out step 1 and then step 2, and maybe when they get a little further along, they can reassess where they are. It doesn't hurt to do a little research, right?
Quick side note, Synnia later expresses that it feels like to her that they've been there for years, which makes her impatience to get going with this plan a little understandable.
Mm-hmm.
But they just don't know anything. They're so impatient to get this done when... Anyway, again, we'll get into it later.
Yeah, so Tanner's compromise solution is to just let's just, take the first steps on the ladder and see how far we get. And like most compromises, it doesn't make anyone happy. Still, it doesn't hurt to learn more. He says that we know that the Carricks evolved as an aquatic species. And Campar's like, wait, how exactly the fuck do we know this? And Tanner is like, well, just look at them. They look like lobsters or whatever. And Campar says, great. All we need is a big fire and some buttery sauce and we can have a beach bake. Tanner notices that him going down this road is making Else nervous, and he takes a little vindictive thrill at still being able to get to her. Jesus Christ, man. Get a hold of yourself.
Oh, Tanner.
Dafyd finally speaks up and says that the Carricks definitely aren't afraid of us, but maybe they're interested in us, hoping that they can use us, but they aren't afraid.
Can't express enough how much they don't know about the Carricks. They don't know anything at all about the Carricks.
Nope.
Tanner is assuming that they're aquatic because on Earth and on Aegean, an arthropod would need the weightlessness of water to grow that large. but the Carricks could be from lower gravity or lower atmospheric pressure planet, or they might have developed that armor they wear to support their increasing weight as they evolve to be larger and more intelligent. Their bodies change the needs of the species as a whole, almost like conscious directed evolution. So we actually don't know anything about where they evolved. And Tonner is engaging in the same flawed reasoning that I think Jon Bernthal's whole group is engaging in, where they think all they need to know about the Carricks is how to kill individual Carricks.
That's right. And Dafyd is not engaging in that.
No, Dafyd is the only person talking any sense around here.
That's right. Tonner says, sure, whatever. The answer to Jon Bernthal is not right now. And he's about to go in on next steps when the door opens. And it's the other librarian Carricks dude. Ha ha. They are all fucked. Everyone freezes, and the Carricks is like, come with me. And people grab little weapons, but they all know it's useless. Still, they follow the Carricks. They're following it when Jessin says to Tonner, no soldiers, meaning that she doesn't see any Rockhuns or soft Lotharks. So maybe they aren't getting marched to their deaths? Maybe? Hopefully? Nope. Instead, the Carricks takes them to the Night Drinker's old lair, which has now been retrofitted for use by the team. Dafyd asks what happened to the Night Drinkers, and the Carricks says that the humans have earned access to their resources. Yay! It's like capture the flag, but bloodier. The new lab even has a dynamic imaging deck, which is apparently very swank. I don't know what that is, but good for them. Synnia then says it's a sign that they can do all the various work, including Austin Core's task.
Girl, what? A sign from the universe? She's being so crazy.
Who is it a sign from? I don't understand.
That's crazy.
Oh my god, it's so weird.
If your friend said this to you and you weren't on an alien planet, you'd be like, you think something is giving you a sign that we should go to war with our neighbors? That's crazy.
I would start a new group chat at that point.
Title of the new group chat, What is up with Synnia?
What is up with Synnia? Girl. Okay, so Tonner just starts coordinating inventory and security, and the team gets to work. At the end of the day, Tonner is exhausted. He just wants a good glass of wine and a book and to be able to watch old movies on cable. I don't blame you. He knows that he's doing the best he can, but also that he doesn't know what he's doing. He knows he needs more people, and he knows that he needs to care less, and that he doesn't know what he needs.
Poor Tauntaun. I do feel a little bad for him here.
Yeah.
He's so stupid, but he does care.
He does care. He does. And I appreciate that. Anyway, Star Wipe cut. And Dafyd is talking to Urs Bernthal Core.
You're in Boston Core?
Yes. We're going to keep making that joke until the end. Urs tells Dafyd he was wondering which one of them it was going to be, whether it was going to be Tonner or Else or Jessin. But Urs is glad that he came. Jon Bernthal asks Dafyd to sit, and he does. Then Austin Core says, tell me why we shouldn't rebel, Alcor. Dafyd starts by saying that the tasks are only partly about the tasks. They're really about usefulness. Urs agrees and says that it's really all about domestication. Dafyd says that every species they talk to are either in fear or resigned to subjugation. There aren't other species like you or Synnia. Austin Core then points to that internet meme with the World War II planes where the ones who return sustain the most damage in places that wouldn't kill them in order to demonstrate survivorship bias. Do you know which meme I'm talking about?
Of course.
Okay. If you listeners don't know what the meme is, I will put it in the show notes. But it's a meme. And Austin Core points to it. He pulls up the internet and says survivorship bias. Dafyd
He does.
then says he's trying to understand what the whole deal is and why the Carricks are acting the way that they are. And Austin Core says, it doesn't fucking matter, bro. This is about humans as a species and whether or not they will accept the yoke. And Austin Core thinks that they shouldn't. Dafyd argues that if they fail to convince the Carricks that they can be domesticated, that everyone is going to die. Probably everyone back on Ajian too. And Austin Core is like, yeah, well, pretty much dead already. They were the minute the Carricks appeared in their skies. Dafyd says that Austincourt shouldn't be the one to make that decision for everyone, because he obviously shouldn't. And Austincourt says there's no decision to be made. The Carricks want to know whether humans are domesticable. They aren't. And Dafyd says that he can't win.
Austincourt is arguing the exact wrong thing. He's coming at this from completely... I actually believe he's being very disingenuous, but he's creating a false timeline that we have to rebel now or basically never. But the point is, like, the choices aren't rebel now, rebel never. The choices are wait until maybe we can win, and if we can't, we can always kill ourselves later.
Right.
Like, we can wait them out. Maybe we can wait them out until we can beat them. Humans are persistence hunters.
Yeah, so that's interesting. You think that he's not being genuine here. What do you mean by that?
Well, cult leaders will often create a sense of urgency, a sense of there being a timeline. Salespeople do it too.
Sure.
It's a classic form of manipulation where you set up a deadline and keep harassing someone about the deadline to make them want to make a decision more quickly. And we've already seen him be very manipulative to Synnia and Jessin both. And I just think he's trying to make, and maybe he even believes it. A lot of times when people are being manipulative, they do believe what they're saying.
Sure.
But I don't think either he is kind of stupid, which maybe, or he can't possibly believe that now is the only time that they have to rebel as fast as possible. Like, that's not, I don't think that's a logical thing to conclude, but it's possible he's being super irrational. I think everyone has grief psychosis. Anyway, I don't think it's true that they really have to rebel now or never.
Clearly it isn't. Austincourt says, "I'm not stupid, Alcor."
Citation needed.
"I know we're gonna lose. We already did. But I'm good at organizing. I'm good at fighting, and I think we can bloody their noses on the way down. If I don't, maybe someone who maybe isn't as good as I am will eventually try. And when they do, the consequences are going to be whatever your friendly librarian and his bosses decide they're going to be. And there's not a goddamn thing any of us can do about it."
Doesn't he remind you of Duarte?
He does. He kind of does.
Like, so good at logistics and admin. I'm good at organizing.
But also a giant fucking dumbass at the same time.
Yes, like big time Dunning-Kruger on every other skill that's not logistics and fighting.
Interesting. Love that. Chapter 30. Dafyd is alone in the cathedral, thinking about his convo with Bernthal. The line, "There's not a goddamn thing any of us can do about it," keeps banging through his head. He thinks about all of the alien species and how the society that they live in is kind of like the berries. There are lots of various species there, and the Carricks keep them bounded, like the berries keep the farm bounded by their skin. The difference is the berries keep the stuff inside them alive, but the Carricks don't care about that. They only care if the stuff inside them are useful and can solve their own damn problems. Dafyd then makes his way to the new lab, and Jessin is keeping guard. He thinks about how much she's changed now. She used to be soft and weak, and now she is hard and strong. He wonders how Jessin thought of him. Campar and Tanner are debating about next steps to feed the turtles, and Jessin gives him a look like none of this matters, since the rebellion is about to happen, and they're all probably going to be put to the sword.
Her expansion of her suicidal ideation to include all humans is super disturbing, girl.
Yeah, it's not good. Dafyd then makes his way back to the rooms, which are empty. He thinks about how the boy who cared so much for adventure and curiosities was gone forever. And then he hears the sounds from the shadows of the doorway, and it's Else. She says she was out looking around. Dafyd says that she should take someone with her because it's not safe. And by the way, what is she even looking for these days? They already found other humans. Great question, Dafyd. Else steps out of the shadows into the light, and Dafyd notes that she doesn't blink or even squint. Wonder why. Her lips moved as if they were speaking, but no sound came out. I'm guessing that means that Else is already starting to influence him with swarmy chemicals or whatever. I'm not sure, but that's the implication that I take from that sentence. He then asks her what's going on, and Else says they can't fight back. Dafyd says Austenquer and Synnia, they're going to. It's their pathological move. Else says if they raise a rebellion, they'll all die here, and that's unacceptable. Dafyd says, well, maybe it makes sense to go down fighting. Else says no. It makes sense to win. Dafyd says, lol, don't think that's an option, and Else pauses. He wonders whether she's breaking down. Kinda, bro. Else then takes a beat and says that she's about to tell him some stuff, but promise me you will hear me out before you judge me. Given what she's about to tell him, this is an insane request. Like, like I said, I am almost positive she is influencing him via chemoreception here, because she'd be crazy not to be.
She's worried about being judged? That does not seem like the right concern.
No, not at all. Like, oh,
locked up in a cell?
Yeah.
Perhaps? Experimented on?
I don't know. Judged. Please don't think bad of me. Okay.
Oh my god.
Dafyd agrees and is like, hey, what's up, babe? And I'm gonna go verbatim on all of this and make Brigid read it, and you don't have to use the swarm voice the whole time. Because it's really important. Like, listen to this passage. Feel free.
There's a war.
Just kidding.
Okay.
There is a war, she said. The Carricks are fighting a vast, terrible war. They have been for generations. It's touched hundreds of solar systems, maybe thousands. You've seen all the species they've put the collar on. For every one of these, there are many that they've judged unusable and eradicated. But this great war has another side. There are forces that are pushing back against them.
How did you find out about?
She lifted a palm, commanding silence. They knew. The other side, they knew the Carricks were coming for Ajian. They knew how the Carricks treat conquered worlds. 6 months before the attack, they snuck a weapon onto Ajian.
All right. I want to cut you off there. They knew the Carricks were coming for Ajian, specifically, she says. And they knew how the Carricks treat conquered worlds. And so 6 months before the attack, they snuck a weapon onto Ajian. That, my friends, is probably the strongest evidence of the trap world Ajian theory. I mean, I think that's the swarm admitting that was what was happening. Anyway.
How else would they know?
How else would they know? All right. Go ahead.
It was, I don't know how to describe this. Think of a billion tiny machines that can take over a living host, hide inside it. The other side, they didn't give it a lot of information in case the Carricks found it. Just enough for it to perform a mission. Connect itself to someone who'd be taken back into Carricks territory. Sneak in here. Right here.
Thank you, Brigid. Again, that passage is super, super important. If you are doing a reread, I think you should slow down at this part, because this is the swarm just admitting a bunch of shit, including that they knew, that they had set, that they had all this plan from the beginning.
It's also a huge horror movie reveal moment. Like, yeah, your girlfriend is a creepy fucking body snatcher alien.
Yeah, no big deal. That's, I mean, just like my prom night. Anyway, she brushes her fingers across her mouth like she wants a cigarette, and then she goes on. Whoever they is, sent a spy who was supposed to gather up all the evidence and send the data back to the other side. And Dafyd is like, hey, so you knew about this spy? It was in touch with you? Who baby was it? Dafyd's like, you knew they were coming? And you knew what they were going to do? And you did nothing? Which is kind of insane when you think about it, right?
It is so funny. I mean, yeah, that's wild. No one would do that.
Not only is my girlfriend a body-snatching alien thing, but she also was like, it's chill that a bunch of aliens are going to do genocide. That's what I want to happen.
That's the plan.
That's the plan, bro.
Is for everyone you know and everything you've ever loved to die.
Yeah. It's chill. And anyway, she says, yeah, that's basically it in broad terms. Dafyd says, why didn't she warn anyone? And she says, because it wouldn't have helped. But the real answer is because it would have jeopardized her mission, right? If she had warned everyone, her mission would have been a failure because they would have handed over the swarm as soon as the Carrick showed up.
Yeah.
She says, the thing is, there is hope. It's a long hope, an endurance hunter kind of hope, but it required silence. Dafyd asks where the spy is now, and Else does a thing with her skin where she shows him how the swarm operates underneath it. The motes shifting under her skin darkened and grew, flowing like a snowstorm along the surface of her fingers, the subtle lines of her palm, before fading away again. It's creepy. Have you ever seen the movie Under the Skin, Brigid?
No.
There's a scene a lot like this, and it does use the word under the skin. It's got ScarJo in it, and she's actually really good. She's also very naked throughout it, so I saw it immediately, of course, but it's a really good movie. It's like a shockingly good movie.
I've actually heard it's good from horror people, so
It's really good. So Dafyd's like, it's in you? And Elsa's like, yeah, it's in me. And Dafyd's like, wild, I was in you too, if you know what I mean. Sorry. He asks if it's conscious, and Else says yes. Dafyd takes this all very much in stride, and I definitely believe the swarm is artificially calming him down. The swarm says the plan for it was to end up in, quote, one of the Carrick's homeworlds, end quote. Stephanie pointed that out to me earlier today, which is a great little nugget, implying that there are several homeworlds for the Carricks, and that the other side knows about them. Right? Okay.
That's useful info.
Yep. And anyway, this is the kind of stuff that they didn't know in Live Suit, or at least they didn't talk about in Live Suit. The conversation keeps coming up as to whether or not Live Suit was before the Mercy of Gods or after the Mercy of Gods. And I just think that the level, in addition to all of the other context clues, the level of information that the great enemy has in the Mercy of Gods is so much far beyond the level of information that they had in Live Suit. In Live Suit, they don't even refer to the Carricks as the Carricks. And here, they know all the stuff about them. They know they have homeworlds. They know how to get there. Anyway.
I have not seen any evidence that it's taking place anytime except before.
Yeah. People are having the conversation. It drives me nuts.
Teach the controversy.
Teach the controversy. Sure. Anyway, the swarm needs to figure out a way to get transferred to a conquered world where security isn't so tight. And Dafyd's like, yeah, that isn't going to happen if the rebellion happens first. So there's the rub. The swarm needs Dafyd to stop the rebellion by any means necessary.
Dafyd has got to be gacked on that swarm juice because a few seconds ago he was pretty sure she was breaking down, and any reasonable person would assume that she was losing her mind, especially after two other members of the group had mental breakdowns, 3 if you count Synnia.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. The swarm says it wants to fight too, that it could kill many Carricks if it wanted to, but that's not its task. And who baby? I would like to see that. I hope we do see that in future books. See a swarm versus many Carricks battle. Fun stuff. Yeah. The swarm says that they need to beat the Carricks all at once or not at all. The swarm says it can keep the Carricks from listening for a while, but even doing that is dangerous, and they can't tell anyone else, no other humans, about it, because it risks the secret getting out. And Else can't be the one who rats out the rebellion, because that would bring attention to the swarm. So, it really needs to be Dafyd. Dafyd says he doesn't know how to stop the rebellion, and Else says no, but you do know someone who can. It's the librarian. Baby, you gotta be a rat. Like Big Pussy, you gotta sell him out.
Topical. Yeah, spoilers for the first 3 seasons of The Sopranos.
Right. All right. Dafyd gets up to leave, and Else grabs his arm. Another one of the touching things, and we can assume maybe that the swarm is doing more influencing when she touches him. Dafyd pauses before he finds out whether or not the swarm could physically overpower him. I'm sure it can. Else says, think it through. They warn the Carricks it's not all people who can... If they warn the Carricks it's not all people who can't be domesticated, it's just a few bad apples, then maybe they won't kill everyone. Dafyd says, if I rat out, they'll kill all of those other people. And Else correctly replies, that's what's going to happen anyway. And here's another quote that I will make Brigid read.
And more than that, we'll all die for nothing. We sacrificed the lives we knew for a chance at this. Maybe we didn't know it at the time, but it's what we did. If we can keep that chance alive, even just for a little while, we have to. We owe it to everyone who didn't make it. Noel and Irina.
Interesting note about sacrifice. We sacrificed the lives we knew for a chance at this.
Who's we? Swarm?
Yeah, well, it's the royal we. Literally, in this case. So
Yeah.
I did this, is what happened. I did this specifically.
I, myself, need this to happen.
Yes.
So, you're going to have to do it.
Dafyd sits with that and then asks the swarm if the kiss, right before the attack, meant anything other than just to turn him into a willing tool. Ooh, buddy. Dafyd says he wouldn't wish this on his worst enemy, and good God, man, you still got laid out of it. Buck up, camper. You are down tremendous.
Dafyd, please. We don't have time for you to wonder if she was faking it. We have to save the world.
She was. The swarm doesn't answer. Dafyd says he'll think about it, and Else says don't take too long. This is another one of those things where we're putting an artificial deadline on something.
Ah, good call.
Yeah, she is manipulating him just like Austin Kerr was trying to. Chapter 31. We start with Rickar, and speaking of getting laid, him and Dennia just did it super hard and super good. Or at least Rickar hopes it was. He asks Dennia if there is any finish work that needs doing, which is nice because it means that Rickar is a willing lover. She says no. He thinks it's been way too long since he's gotten this type of release, which, yeah, I'll bet, not the sexiest place that they're in. He watches Dennia naked, and then the post-nut clarity hits, and he reminds himself that this is a bad time to decide to be in love. Yeah, Rickar, on top of being in an alien prison planet, it's a little early in the relationship. Dennia says she has to work, so time to go, bud. Rickar says, sure, but maybe next time she can come to his place? He walks out and sees Merrol and Jellit, who politely ignore him. Rickar is walking back to his place and he's feeling hella good. Quote, even in prison, people indulged in affairs or fell in love. Even in prison, he could be surprised by moments of unexpected beauty. Life in captivity was still life. Unless and until he was thrown in total isolation, there would be the chance to make a human connection. He had food, he had shelter, he had work. He had a ration of joy and pleasure. There was no reason to think he would keep them, but he had them now. And then later he thinks, people sang songs in death camps, and that wasn't a comfort until you were in a death camp yourself. Rough stuff, generally, but I think that this is important internal monologue.
I agree. I think it's another example of Rickar being inherently open to connecting with other people and to seeing the humanity and beauty in life. And I also got the feeling that this encounter and the post-nut feelings of joy were having him kind of reconsider joining the rebellion, because it's like they're, where they don't have choirs is when everyone's dead.
Yeah. So then Rickar sees Synnia sitting alone and he joins her, and it sort of completes the narrative pair that Brigid mentioned a couple of episodes ago. Synnia mentions that she no longer knows how old she is. You mentioned this part earlier. Rickar said none of them do. There's no way to keep time. How long had they been there? Months, definitely. Years, perhaps. It's unclear. Synnia says she's tried to move past Noel's death, but she just can't. She's tried to work and be in a society, but she just can't. She just hates the Carricks so much. She was sitting there listening to Tanner and Kampar talk about work, and she just couldn't handle it, so she left to be alone. Rickar apologizes for invading her alone time, and Synnia says, no. It's different with you, because we were outcasts together. You're the one that I can be alone with.
So immediately after Rickar's heart opens wide to love and humanity, Synnia expresses how disconnected and closed off hatred is making her.
It's a great point. And so then we do a dramatic dissolve and shift to Jellit's POV. I'm just doing as many wipes as I can. All right.
Full toolbox.
Yeah, exactly. Jellit is doing the groundwork for the revolt, deciding who can be trusted and who cannot. One guy he definitely cannot trust is Dafyd Alcor, who just happens to be waiting for him back at his quarters. This should be interesting. Dafyd asks if they could talk, and which Synnia warned him would happen. Jellit didn't want to hate all of the people in Tanner's work group. After all, they had kept Jessin alive and reasonably safe, and they were good for her. He didn't think much of Dafyd specifically, but that was fine. Still, he knew what this was going to be about. Jellit tells Merrol that he can take watch duty, and she leaves to give them some privacy. Jellit asks Dafyd, "What's up?" And Dafyd beats around the bush a little, trying to figure out the best way to push Jellit's buttons. You can really tell that Dafyd is at a real disadvantage here, given how he doesn't know Jellit at all. So he doesn't know how to manipulate Jellit, whereas he does for most other people. So Dafyd tries the one tactic most obvious. Try to get Jellit not to go through with the revolt by relying on Jellit's sympathy for his sister Jessin. But this was a bad tactic. Jellit is not playing that game at all. I can help you with that. I'm committed. I'm all the way in. Deep as anyone can get. That's how much I'm a part of it. I watched these things kill people I know. My world was taken. My life was broken. Everyone else's too. The plan where I just sit here and like a good pet and try and make them happy, I'd rather die. I'd rather have Jessin die. I'd rather have all of us die than live on our bellies licking Carrick's shit. Does that clear up things for you?
It really feels like Jellit thinks he owns Jessin.
Yeah. You mean by taking care of her all that time, he gets to decide when she actually eventually leaves, dies?
Yeah, precisely.
Oh, that is a interesting thought and a rough one. Anyway, Dafyd is like, okay, yeah, it clears things up for me, and he nods and leaves. Jellit feels better that he told Dafyd off, but he is super annoyed about the situation. Eventually, Merrol comes down to relieve him. I'm getting the impression that Merrol is like Austin Core's number 2. And asks Jellit what happened. Jellit says that Dafyd might end up being a problem, and Merrol suggests that Jellit just bump off Dafyd instead, which, welp, okay.
Comrade, what the fuck happened on that other ship? I dare say that our little group is nowhere near as trauma radicalized as Jellit's group. They are really off the deep end.
Yeah, seriously. They're like the Symbionese Liberation Army, but I mean, I don't know.
They really are.
Then we get to
the swarm.
Thank you. Yes. Finally, we check in with the swarm, and it is anxious AF for good reason. But the alarm that the swarm feels as the result of the impending violence causes each of the swarm's human portions to remember their own times of dread. Else thinks about a time an animal came boiling out of her shoe.
The sense of discovering a threat at the last moment feels familiar. I just really like that line.
It's good. And then Amir remembers once teetering on the edge of a cliff while in a transport vehicle. The parts of the swarm that should sleep can't because of the anxiety, and then the no sleep makes the anxiety worse, which, welcome to my world, buddy. That's how it goes. And then Else Yanin remembers the playground where she used to swing with her cousins. Amir Kindred thinks of the scent of her mother's lentil soup on a cold winter evening. The swarm has nothing of its own to call back. It takes these small pleasures and it mourns their passing. These are the things that are burned on the altar of war in the hope that prayer will bring peace. Not peace, victory. Good stuff. The swarm sits and passively monitors everything going on. Else is wondering where Dafyd is, and when he eventually gets back, the swarm forgets itself and goes out to meet him all swarmy like. And Synnia is like, Else, are you okay? And then the swarm fixes itself and pretends it was just something in its eye. And so then the swarm sort of internally chastises itself for being sloppy because it can't afford to make mistakes. It asks to talk to Dafyd, and it can tell that he's in distress.
This is creepy as all get out. This is a total horror movie moment.
It really is. Are you okay? Oh yes, I'm fine. Sorry.
Yeah.
Dafyd sits on Else's bed and says that he doesn't think he can do this. The swarm knows it's putting Dafyd in a terrible spot, and it hates that. Amir yells at it. And I thought it was gross when you were just screwing him. Get their ass, Amir. Read him for filth.
I love her.
The swarm ignores it and then asks Dafyd what happened. Dafyd suggests that they tell Jellit about the spy. And the swarm can... And it says that the swarm can taste the tinny flavor of Dafyd's stress, which is decidedly different than the copper taste of fear. Am I right, J-Sac? Very different.
Did you see on the Reddit, someone was like, what's the copper taste of fear of Captives War? And I think it was Daniel Abraham posted that they were like, it's possible the author's been made a little self-conscious.
Yes, I did see that.
Sorry.
I saw that while I was sitting in companionable silence, reading Reddit. Anyway, the swarm says, no, that's a bad idea. Jesson might think that they're another alien. Are they? I don't know. And he probably won't be comfortable with it, given that Dafyd isn't comfortable with it, and Dafyd has gotten all up in their swarmy guts.
Gross.
Sorry, I had to. The swarm looks at Dafyd, and because it is what it is, it can see Dafyd deeper and more completely than either Else or Amir has ever been able to see anyone in their entire lives. And it forces them understand Dafyd. And then when it kisses Dafyd now, it feels no conflict. The swarm knows that Dafyd will never go along with its plan without Jellit. It knows that Dafyd's position is totally irrational, but also it understands that irrationality is inherent in humanity. So the swarm proposes a deal to Dafyd. If Else, can convince Jellit to go along with the plan, will Dafyd agree to go to the librarian? Dafyd says convincing Jellit is impossible, but the swarm says not to worry about that. Just agree to the deal, yes or no. Dafyd says he knows that the right thing to do is to say yes, but it's so hard. The swarm agrees, and it knows how hard it is. We can't save everyone, it says. That was never an option, but we can save the people it is possible to save. We can do the best we can do. And there's a quote from inside the swarm's interiority. He is silent, still. It can feel the turmoil in his brain and in his body, like it is sitting beside a fire. The sorrow like acid in his soul. Else's heart aches for him. Even Amir loves him a little in that moment. And then Dafyd says, all right. And the swarm feels profound relief and hope. And then Dafyd asks the swarm if it would lie to him to get him to agree to the plan. After all, the swarm fed Ajian to the Carricks to get there in the first place, so it would be perfectly consistent with the swarm's character to lie to him to get him to agree. The swarm's affection for Dafyd swells. Amir even feels her affection for Dafyd grow. The swarm wonders if it misjudged Dafyd, and that he's an easy man to underestimate. Else says that's why they love him. Oh, you love him now, says Amir. Yes, we do, answers Else. Dafyd asks Else again if she would lie to him, and the swarm answers honestly, yes, I would, but I won't. Such a good scene.
So good.
And we are back with Dafyd, and our boy is going through it. He wonders when the universe is going to stop turning itself upside down. Judging by what Kurta Klal says about him earlier, I think that the answer is never. At any rate, he's pretty done with it. He watches the colors of the alien dawn and the grid structure. He can't sleep because he knows he's about to go to the Carricks and tell them something that will pretty much immediately cause dozens of human deaths, which I would imagine is probably stressful. Kampar comes out and jokes about the indignity of having to boil his own water for tea as a senior researcher. Dafyd, who is a live fucking wire at this point, fights back the urge to be mad at Campar. Good for Dafyd. Campar asks him what's the matter. Dafyd says, every day I wake up and I know I might be killed, and I probably won't know why. And you're always making a joke. And Campar says, this is what I do instead of curl up on the floor weeping. I mean, except for the times when I curl up on the floor weeping. I think we all remember that. When I can't make fun of it, I can't do anything at all. If you'd rather not talk right now. And then Dafyd says, your constant joking is annoying and exhausting, and I don't want you to ever stop. Mixing the message a bit, which I love. Okay. And then Dafyd says he doesn't...
Such a cute scene.
It is. Dafyd says he doesn't want to lose any of them, and Campar says they may not have a choice, since they basically don't have choices anymore. But Dafyd knows that's not true. He's got one big honkin' choice weighing on him. Though he doesn't think that there's much of a choice there. He has to do it. It's at this point, when Tanner bursts out into the main room all afire, he demands a pen and paper. Tanner completely ignores Dafyd and proceeds to frantically draw and redraw a bunch of diagrams. He then takes 2 sheets of paper and lays one on top of the other on a window. And then he swears, he turns back to Campar and Dafyd. Then, with an expression that was a mixture of rage and triumph, Tanner declares that he knows how to feed the fucking turtles. And that is the end of this part.
Nice work, Tanner.
Good job. So,
much to ponder.
Stuff to talk about. I think the main thing I want to talk about as we close this episode out is if we were in the alien prison planet, you or I, Brigid, and we didn't know about the swarm, right? Which side would we be on? Would we be on Campar's or Jellit's? The side of going out fighting, playing the long and potentially hopeless game. And I think that there are compelling arguments for both sides. And I should start this by saying that while the narrative explicitly invokes death camps and slavery and prison bondage, like Brigid and I are 2 extremely white people, middle-class people who have never had to deal with anything approaching this. So caveats apply. And so like...
Super good point.
Yeah, I don't want to say that we are an authority on bondage and what that feels like or anything like that, because we're not. Mm-mm. And if there are folks out there who are listening to this with different perspectives, we very much want to hear from them. Send us an email, please add us, however you want to do it, because I think it's important to hear from all perspectives in this conversation. This is like a very sort of classic storytelling conversation, is when you are in the worst possible situation, what do you do? Do you fight or do you play this long game? And I think that there are arguments for both sides.
So I do kind of think that there's arguments for both sides, but I also think that this isn't actually an argument about whether to fight or capitulate. This is an argument about whether you commit suicide to escape confinement or hope for a different way of escaping. I guess it's both.
Yes. No, I think you're right. I think that's a great way of framing it. Yes.
But we don't, because everyone can see plainly that they can't possibly win, that this rebellion won't affect... Like, it's not going to stop the Carricks or make them think about their actions or anything. I mean, maybe they're deluding themselves that the Carricks will, stop and think about, like, this will be an after-school special for the Carricks, but the Carricks are fundamentally not capable of thinking in terms of stopping, because that's not how they view the universe. To them, the whole point of being alive is to continue trying to expand the Carricks' empire. Sure. And the loss of individuals is completely fine. Like, this won't even surprise them.
No.
It's, if someone can be killed by an animal, they deserve to be killed.
Right, which we find out in the next, that is how they feel in the next part. But you're absolutely right that this is more about, do you kill yourself, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess, like, right, they don't have any way of knowing that the Carricks will never change their minds at this point, but they can see that they won't win. You're right.
And so, I mean, I guess in my mind, the sort of arguments for doing it, for being on Jellit's side, on Ostenkor's side, is that, like, it feels good to fight. It does, That's kind of why Synnia wants to do it. Like, she just wants to fight. She's just spoiling for it.
Rage feels better than despair.
Absolutely. it avoids a life of slavery. We talked about, maybe it sends a message to the Carricks. I don't think it would, but that could go either way, right?
I guess there's some chance the Carricks would. I can see the rebellers believing that it would send a message, but I can't see it actually sending a message.
Right. I think another big point in favor, and one of the reasons why I interpret Jellit to be in favor of it, is that it gives him a sense of control and finality, right? That he is completely out of control of everything, and this gives him control over something.
Yeah.
And then, you got revenge and defiance and those sorts of abstract things that motivate people to fight in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, the arguments for living are, you get to live, which is good, I think, first and foremost. You get hope for the future, not just for yourself, but for the rest of Ajian. That's the big thing, is that, the real thing that I cannot wrap my head around is Austin Kerr being like, I don't care about the rest of Ajian. And that makes me believe, as you sort of deduced, that he is more of like a cult leader, more of like a suicidal maniac than somebody who's like looking at this from any kind of objective perspective, because everyone should care, about the people they've left behind, just because you're not going back.
If there's even a chance of them living, if their actions can keep the people on Ajian safe, then that's the chance that they should be taking, not the chance that...
Yeah, you aren't making the decision to fight for yourself and everyone else in the world, in the entire world planet, and potentially on Ajian. You're allowing that decision to be made by other people, which, I think is really good and important.
Yeah.
And I think that another big part, and it's the reason why we get that scene with Rickar and Dennia having sex, is that you get those drafts of joy that Rickar mentioned. Maybe you get to bone, maybe you get to sing songs, maybe you get to have little moments of delight and happiness that keep people going forward.
I think that, yes, we saw that with Rickar, and we keep coming back to the singing in prison camps thing, because I think these things are what make us human, and what make it worthwhile to keep humanity going is the moments of joy. Even in total despair, we find ways to express ourselves, we find ways to connect and make art and lift each other up, and that's what's there's many things that are interesting and special about humankind, but that's one of the big ones, is the joy even in total despair.
Yeah, I think it was last episode when we were in the Swarm's point of view, where the Swarm noted that people had made art out of despair, that they had literally drawn things on the walls, and that's something that we do.
Yeah, like in The Fifth Element, when Corbin Dallas is trying to show her why humans are worth saving, he shows her all that kind of stuff.
It's a good point. Thank you for bringing up The Fifth Element and Corbin Dallas. Yeah, and speaking of, The Fifth Element, I think that the alien interviews at the beginning of this part are directly relevant to this conversation. All of the aliens they interview are at bare minimum content with bondage. The Phylarchs are the most expressive about it, but even the swampy room guy is sort of resigned to its fate, even while acknowledging that it has fallen before it rises in bondage. And I think we as readers are supposed to sit with the implications of what kind of life that would be. And it's uncomfortable. It feels alien to us, and it should, because the narrative tells us that we as humans are not suited for domestication. So given that, it's no surprise that a significant number of the people in the story, and a significant number of people in the world, I think, would choose death or oblivion over the yoke. It's our nature. And like we learn in The Expanse, humans are sort of the cause of and solution to all of our problems. And I think this narrative is designed to take that insight and show the beauty of it on one hand, and also the reckless destructive power of it on the other. But I think when I come back to the real reason, and obviously I don't ever want to make the decision to live or die on behalf of anybody else. And that's, I think, the most powerful reason. But the most selfish reason, and the reason that connects with me personally, is that idea of drafts of joy, is that you, regardless of how terrible life gets, for me, there has always been moments of real beauty and wonder. And as I read this today, and I popped it into the notes because I think it really sums things up. Claudia Rankine, who's a poet, an American poet, she's great. She said, of our world, there have been devastating moments, and there will be devastating moments, but there will also be a life. And I think that kind of nails it, that a life among those devastating moments is worth living.
Yes, I totally agree. I also think strategically, two things. One, I will always be more curious about what's going to happen tomorrow than I am longing for death. Mm-hmm. Or maybe I shouldn't say always, but up till now in my life, that's been the case, even at my lowest. And also, I just feel like they haven't been on this planet. Like this specific situation, I feel like they haven't been in this situation long enough to know that it's hopeless.
Yeah.
And they're throwing away everything, their entire species, everything that, as far as they know, everything humans have ever accomplished. Every human that's ever lived disappears forever, and that's okay because they can't handle being in captivity. Mm-hmm. To me, that's an unacceptable risk. And also, it's like Justin said a couple chapters ago, you can always kill yourself later. Like, you never don't have a choice. It can be really hard to kill yourself, but, like, they have so much freedom in this little world that they can manufacture weapons. And so if they get to the point where, like, they just can't do it anymore, they have that option. And to me, that's a better option than this murder-suicide pact with the entirety of humanity.
Yeah.
We were texting about the novel Beloved, and I kept thinking of that because I was like, it's really likely that I'm coming at this from a place of extreme privilege where I just can't imagine how bad this would suck.
Right.
And if you haven't read Beloved, you should. It's good. But also, it's a story about a woman choosing to kill her child rather than let them both be taken back into slavery. And it's so relevant to this, I think, because she questions whether that was the right choice for the whole rest of her life. And, you know, if you're all dead, you can't question whether it was the right choice. And she doesn't, like, kill everyone else that's enslaved. I guess why I bring that up is because that's where they totally lose me, is like, I understand doing anything you can to escape and to keep the people you love from being in bondage. Or I understand it, you know, philosophically. Obviously, I haven't experienced anything like that. But where I don't understand is why it's an acceptable risk to Austin Kerr to lose everyone that's ever lived.
I agree.
I think he's formed a little death cult where they're totally irrational. I mean, Synnia thinks that the universe is giving her messages to go through with it. I think that they're just not being super smart about this.
Yeah, and I think
it's just how I feel.
And you mentioned earlier that, I mean, they have the translator box, right?
Right. So it's like, even like, that's another point in favor of this group being like in thrall to this idea, is that when they get this new information, like when they meet a group that has a translator box, they're not like, oh, hell yeah, we can learn more about what the fuck is going on around here. They're like, but this other technology you have where we can kill people with it. Tell us about that. Yeah. Like, hasn't reassessed the situation for this new possibility at all. And I just think that's really hazardous. And that's why I think Dafyd is making the right choice ultimately.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else we want to hit?
Oh, yes, sorry. I want to thank our 5-star reviewers on iTunes by name, if that's okay.
Sure.
David Stanaway, thank you. Definitely not a host.
That was me.
Oh, and Tarth Forever.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, that was nice. They left us little reviews on iTunes, which I appreciate.
That's how people find out about this little project.
Okay. So, other than all the suicide talk, I think that was fun. You know, I think I think it was a good discussion. And if you want to have more of the discussion, please add us. But come back next time when we cover part 6, Small Battles in the Great War. And we're going to finish off T-Mog at that part. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's been such a run, such a wild ride. Follow us on Buzzsprout or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also send us an email at themercyofpods@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram at themercyofpods or on Reddit, also at themercyofpods. Our logo is by Matt Howes, and our music is by Push the Button. Our music is Push the Button by Sid Luscious and the Pants, available wherever you get your music.
Heck yeah. Let's go.
Push the button.
We get a treat at 7 p.m. and she's like, "Where's my fucking treat?"
I get it.